Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we'll be solving one more question called Possible Base version 1. Okay, so here's the question. Scikit is playing a game. There is a grid of n into n in the game and the Scikit is currently at a cell 0 or 1 of 1. To win the game, Scikit has to reach at position n of n. The only restriction is that he can only go to the adjacent cell, adjacent right cell or the down cell. The game is easy and he has to win the game also. But he is wondered that in how many ways he can win the game. He can't be able to get the number of possible ways and asked you for the help. Find the total number of possible ways he can reach to n of n. Since the answer can be very large, please print the module of 10 to the power 9 plus 7. Okay, so we have a player called Scikit who's trying to play a game which involves a grid of n into n. So currently he's at the cell 1 of 1 and he's asking us in how many ways he can reach from that position to the destination cell, that is n of n. So let's try to visualize. So here the input contains the only line n, output print the answer. So let's go ahead and see. If the input, if you have 3 and 3, if you have a matrix of 3 by 3, let me draw a 3 by 3 matrix. You have 0, 1 and 2, you have 0, 1 and 2. So let's assume this is the very first cell, 0, 0. Here's Scikit is, which is our source, and he's trying to reach the destination cell. My bad, that is here. So that is going to be here, destination cell, the very last n of n, which is 3, 3. So the question is, he has a restriction that he can either go to the right or a down. So this is going to be a right and this is going to be a down. Now we need to help him finding out the number of possible ways he can come here. So let's go and visualize. So he can travel to the right and he can also travel to the right, and since there is no more right, you have to travel to the down and one more down. So that's one way. So let's keep a count. 0 plus 1. You have one way. After taking first right, he can also, okay, let me take a color. After taking the first right, he can also go down and say down and say a right. So this is one more way of doing it, right? So I'll say this plus 1 equals to, there are two ways. Now let's try to figure out one more way. After coming this cell here down, he could have gone to one more right and then say down. So there's also one more way of doing this. So there is plus 1 becomes 3. Again, now we are done with all the rights. We'll try to visualize from the down. Rather than starting from the right, you could have started with a down and down. And since there's no more down available, you take a right and take a right. So there's one more way, plus 1, 4. So let's try to find one more way. So rather than going down here, he could have gone left and again a left, right, and then there's no more right. So you can have gone down to find. So you can have gone 1 plus, you will have a 5. Lastly, rather than going all the way to the right, he could have taken a down here and then a right. So there's one more way. So plus 1, you have total 6 ways. So that is how you have an answer 6. For this given 3 into 3, the output is 6, right? So that is because these are the number of ways. You can see the color coding. So now I'll be giving a thinking pause so that you can go and think how probably we can solve this question and come up with an algorithm. Post that, we'll discuss the actual answer. Okay, so How about we take one or two ways and we'll try to expand and see how this is. So out of all the 6 ways, one way is that you go like this, like this, like this, and like this. And the other way is one more. The second way was like this, and then like this, and like this. So let's draw again the other ways, other possible ways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I need one more. Yeah, that would do the work. So that's the first, that's the second. And we'll start from right. We'll go down, we'll go down, we'll go left. So that's the other way. We start from down, you go down, you go left, so right and right. Okay, there's you go down, you go right, you go right, you go down. So other way, you go down, you go right, you go right, you go left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 4, 6. So yeah, you have your 6 ways right in front of us. There's an extra, we'll delete that. So while doing all the 6 possible ways, now I have just drawn in more detailed fashion. They all come up to just only one point. So let me draw a matrix now. So this is where you need to reach eventually, right? So now if you are at this point, how many number of ways that you can reach to this cell is the first question. So let me ask you guys, how many number of ways you can reach to this cell? Please answer. Okay, the answer is 1, because this is a starting point. You cannot have other ways to reach to this cell. There's always going to be 1. Going on to the next cell, this on the right. How many ways you can reach this particular cell? There is only 1 way, because since this is the second cell, there's only 1 way on the right. So I'll say 1 way. Next cell, the very first row, how many ways you can reach this cell? Only via the right column. So there's only 1. Similarly, the very first column will also have only 1 way to reach the cells, is via down, down, down action. But coming to this middle cell, how many ways you can reach this cell? 1 is that you can go on the right and then a down or a right. So let's take a look here. You can reach this cell via this orange path, or you can reach this cell via this path. This and this will give you to the middle path. So look at this particular cell, how you're reaching here. Orange is coming from the top, here is coming from the right. So there are 2 ways. So we call this as 2 ways. Now next, how many ways you can reach this particular cell? So let's take a look. Here you have that one cell, that is 1. Again, there's one more, 2, and then there's one more over here. So there are 3 ways. There's a 3 ways you can come to this cell. Again, this cell, you have 1. Here you have 1 way, 2 way, and 3 ways. You have 3 ways that you reach. At the last, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 ways to reach this cell. So that is what the answer is. Now let me take this opportunity and ask you guys, do you see any correlation or any pattern in this particular matrix? Okay, so let me draw a bigger matrix. So here you had the very first row is always going to have 1, 1, 1. That's fine. To get a 2, how about you make a summation of this and this? So that's the pattern. So since the number of ways you can come to this cell is always going to be the right and the down. So in reverse, you can come from the left or the up. So the number of ways you can reach to this cell. Okay, let me take a color. The number of ways you can reach to this cell and the number of ways you can reach to this cell is going to sum the total number of ways. So to this cell, there's only 1. There's only 1. So you make it a 2. There's 2 ways. 1 way here, 1 way here. So the number of ways you can reach this cell is there is 1 way from up and there are 2 ways from here. So you say a summation of these 2 is going to be 3. Again, the number of ways you can reach to this cell, this particular cell, is 1 way from here and 2 ways from here. So you call it 3 ways. So it's always the number of ways up and the left. is going to be the answer to the current cell. Again, 3 plus 3, 6. That's how you get your answer. So for every grid, it's the summation of, let's say if you have I, comma j, if you have I, comma j, so the answer is going to be number of ways that you can get I minus 1, comma j, and then plus number of ways you're going to get I, comma j minus 1. That's all, folks. That's how you're going to solve this question. So step number 1, create the grid. Fill the first row and the first column with ones, and then from the 1 of 1, you call this thing the number of ways. The previous and the top, you do the summation and return the final answer. So let's go and code it out. We have declared our grid. So the very first row and the first column, we have to make all our values as 1, correct? So we are going to do that. Same way for the columns too. And now we're going to have our actual for loop, which is going to iterate over all the elements in the grid. Initially, we have initialized the grid to value 0. I minus 1, the number of ways that you can come to that point. Mod plus grid of I, j minus 1, percentile mod. Again, a whole mod. Because it's given in the question that you might have a very large answer, so we need to do a mod. And eventually, you just have to return grid of n minus 1, m minus 1. Add. Yeah, there we go. You get a 6. Let's try submitting. Successfully done. A quick summary to the question. So what we are doing is we are creating a grid. Initially, the number of possible ways to the very first row and the first column is only 1. So you initialize the grid with 1, and then the subsequent cells, the number of ways to reaching that point with the operation right operation and a down operation is like how many inputs are to that. So to this cell, there's only the up and the left. So you take the values of this and you sum it up and say these are the number of ways to the current cell. You do so on and so forth. Eventually, you come to your last cell and you return that as your answer. That's all, folks. Thank you so much.